How are you doing? This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, the founder of the highest paid part-time job in the world, options training program. And let's go ahead and get into market Mondays for 5/24/2021. I want to ask you, at the top of the particular show, can you like the video, subscribe if you have not already subscribed to the channel, share this out to somebody else if you think they could get value from it. What we're trying to do is we're trying to grow the channel, get this particular broadcast out to more people. The reason why we do Market Mondays is because we want to bring a market-based conversation to people that normally may not have been exposed to the markets and kind of understand how they can benefit from being involved in the financial markets, whichever financial market that it may be. And we want to do it in a very common tongue. We don't want to make you feel like you got to be wearing a suit. You got to have a PhD in finance or mathematics. You got to have a PhD in economics. Or you got to be one of those people on CNBC sitting at the table with a suit on. So we're trying to give it to you in a very, very common tongue and to kind of create a conversation kind of based around the people in your area, but also try to help you raise your level of conversation so you can start talking about subjects that are a little bit more complex that can benefit you long run. So let's go ahead and get into it. So today is 5/24/2021. The Dow was up around 0.5. S&P 500 rose around 1.0. NASDAQ composite rose around 1.5. There was a lot of concerns that maybe the cryptocurrency fall over the weekend will bleed into the normal market. That has not happened as of yet, but it doesn't mean it won't happen, right? If cryptocurrency continues to be very volatile, there's no telling where we may get some type of negative reaction in the overall market. 10-year treasury is around 1.6%. We talked about before, we become very desensitized to that number around 1.6. We may need it to go to 1.75, maybe 1.8 for people to start paying attention to it again. And then we got a lot of really good economic data coming later this week. Now we're going into a holiday weekend. So that holiday weekend, as next week, it's going to be a shorter week. It's going to be, I don't believe the market's going to be open on Monday. So we want to look for maybe the market goes green this week as we push into the holiday. And then we kind of start, we go into that new month right out of the holiday with maybe a different perspective on the market. But we also got to factor in seasonality. Right. So let's see how the rest of the week goes, because we started off really, really green this week because we know we are going into a holiday weekend. And I think because of that holiday weekend, a lot of economic data is not coming out till Thursday or Friday. So we want to see how the market reacts to that later this week. Right. Because we want to figure out, are we going to go into the weekend green? Or are we going to go into the weekend red? And then everybody trying to figure out how we're going to open up next week. Now, let's go into some jump outs. And we're going to kind of talk about stocks that did really well this week or stocks that do not do that well, and kind of give you some context to it. So Norwegian Cruise Lines was up around 4.7% or almost 5%. And one of the reasons is because they said that they're going to start resuming their cruises around August. So we have an actual date in which they're going to start going back to business. So the market was slightly bullish, and we just want to see if they can get those boats back on the water, start bringing some good numbers back. They can start regaining a lot of their lost share value that took them years to build up. But I think they're going to get back to it a lot faster than it took them to build up initially. Now we're looking at AMC. AMC was around 13%. We know this is a really trending stock, especially on YouTube. One of the reasons why I was up is because the Fast and Furious numbers from China came back really well. And we believe that AMC is going to get that particular movie. So because we believe AMC is going to get that movie title, it did really, really well in China. That's going to essentially allow AMC to forecast, right, that they're going to be able to drive some decent revenue, right, because they know that this is a movie that's already worked in other markets. And we also believe because it has American actors, this movie is going to also work in this particular U.S. based market. Now we're looking at crude oil. Crude oil was up really, really well. If you could see the chart and if you can see it, I know I no longer have my 4K monitor. It was trending up even like in the early morning, right? And then it hit 8 o'clock, it started really moving up really, really bullish. And so what we're seeing is that crude oil is going up. Now, we have been talking out on this show for weeks about the energy sector starting to really get very bullish as we get closer and closer to the summer. And we kind of think with a lot of the issues in the Middle East, those may be some catalysts to drive that particular sector up because it'll be a good justification. And we know that normally they want that sector to go up towards the towards the summer because we're going to get a lot more people, a lot more active with driving and utilizing things that can kind of draw on that particular energy sector. Then we're going to go into the hottest time of the year where people are going to be using a lot of energy to try to cool their house. So this may be a good time where people can be very, very bullish on that sector because of seasonality and also because of worldwide events. Now let's go into our particular topic of the day. We're going to talk about cyclical versus secular change. So this is some content that I've created for my VIP course, but I'm going to kind of give you a basic understanding of what I'm talking about. Right. So we're looking at cyclical, right? So what I mean by cyclical is it goes in cycles, right? So now, to be very frank with you, and not that you can get like out of the context, the whole universe is a cycle. So we're in one big cycle, and then you can break that one big cycle down into even smaller and smaller cycles. And if you ever take mathematics like calculus, you'll start to understand that essentially we're just in one big cycle. Nobody, people don't want to talk about it, but it is what it is. So essentially we're just in one big cycle, and you can take that particular cycle and break it down into smaller and smaller cycles, and then break those cycles into smaller and smaller cycles to where you can get to the point where they're being measured at very, very, very extremely small increments going up to infinity, right? But there's really no infinity is also a cycle, but don't want to sidetrack us. So I want you to understand what I mean by cyclical. It just means cycle, right? It's something that is going to last for a period of time, and then it's going to end, and then we're going to go into a new pattern. What I mean by secular is something that's going to be very, very long term, and it really means that a particular environment is going to shift. So let me give an example. What I mean. So cyclical, when I say seasonal, you can have a scenario where, so we talk about fashion. Fashion, people will tell you, always come back. So we had an era where people wore tight jeans. Then we had an era where people wore baggy jeans. Then we had an era where people wore tight jeans again. Now we're seeing some of the same people that wore tight jeans, that they started wearing tight jeans when they was real young. They're now going back to looser fitting clothes again. So we're seeing that it's really just a cycle, goes over and over and over and over and over again, right? Secular is once people started utilizing MP3s to download music, they never went back to the old physical forms of music again. So we went forward from there. So we went to MP3s, downloading music, to now just streaming. We never went backwards. I listen to a lot of music on YouTube now, right? I do my MP3 player. I listen to a lot of YouTube. I rarely listen to CDs anymore, except if I'm driving like long distance. Then I'll put maybe some CDs in, maybe even sometimes use the MP3 player too, just depending on what I want to listen to, right? Because I don't have everything on my catalog on my MP3. So we got to understand is that once they started allowing people to download MP3s and utilize them, and then they created players for those MP3s, they created a secular change in music where pretty much everybody left physical and never came back. Right. So you got to understand the difference. So we're showing you a picture of the Fast and Furious 9, which premiered in China, did really well. The numbers came back really well. So they're very enthusiastic about bringing that movie domestically. Now, why did they do that? Why did they put that movie in China first, even though it's pretty much an American based movie, even though they probably I forgot what that term is, where they take the language and they put it in that particular native language. But it's pretty much American based actors. I don't believe it was set in China, but they put that movie in China first, and then now they're bringing that movie to the United States. So essentially what they're doing is they're allowing the movie to get legs over there first and bring it to the U.S. And it's not the first time they've done this. They've done this before, right? They used to also bring movies to film festivals first and then bring them to the United States. However, one of the reasons why they're doing that is because they feel like there's a secular change in movie viewing. A lot of times the big production houses feel like China has really one of the better markets for movie viewing, because Chinese people now are just starting to get into watching movies in theaters now, because we understand that, you know, the communist government of China is really trying to elevate the economic situation for the masses of people over there. So they're starting to develop a lot of working class and middle class tastes, when some of those are, as a form of entertainment, going to see the movies on the weekend. They're starting to, you know, develop, because when people have a certain amount of income, now they want to start consuming. So you have to give them opportunities to dispose of that particular income. And when watching movies is one of the bigger opportunities. And it's a big deal for an American based production to be able to view in China, because one thing about the communist government of China is they engage in a lot of regulation as far as what kind of content can be viewed in their country. So if you can access that market, it's such a big market, it's so lucrative, it's a good deal. Therefore, there's what people believe is a secular change going on in movie viewing, where it used to be that the American based market was the biggest market for viewing. So a lot of times you will launch the movie in America, and if it did really, really well, we take it overseas. Right. And then what we're doing now, and what you're going to see, is that they're going to start creating content just for the overseas market. And then if it works there, then we bring it to the United States. But we're not making the United States the first priority anymore, because what we're seeing in the United States is that we're dealing with a contracting market to leave the house to go see movies. A lot of people are doing a lot of direct streaming, which is really direct to consumer movie viewing. That's a secular change. So when you're looking at a particular industry, you want to ask yourself, is this change cyclical or is it secular? Now, you can have a cyclical change bring about a secular change. And so an example would be COVID. Well, what we're going to have is, most likely for airlines, also for cruise ships, is they're probably going to require that you have some type of COVID vaccination to utilize those particular forms of transportation. So COVID was secular, but the testing is going to be secular. So we have a cyclical change, which was COVID. We all knew was not going to last forever. Eventually it was going to solve this problem, or whether you believe the problem to be real or not. Eventually we were going to move away from believing that this is something that is acute to us. And then we transition into a secular change where now, to utilize these particular forms of transportation, you now have to show a verification that you've been vaccinated, or you may have to take some type of rapid test to show you don't have it, or you may have to do a combination of the two. So now we create a secular change. I talked about before, whether or not you believe 9/11 to be actually what the story that they give, it created a secular change in the way in which you do business with the airlines. So everything changed after 9/11. You had whole new verticals sprout up because of the result of 9/11. So when you're looking at a particular, when you're looking at something from a macroeconomic standpoint, you want to ask yourself, is this cyclical or secular? And then there's a process in which I teach people kind of like how to create a flow chart or workflow, and then kind of break that down as how that's going to impact a particular area, and then how it may start looking at impact companies, right? So, and then you want to start, really asking yourself to start having conversations. A lot of people, a lot of times confuse cyclical and secular, and they also confuse timetables. So the average person a lot of times thinks that a secular change is going to happen faster than it may not happen. And they can be true. But the question is, what is going to be the catalyst to force that? So a lot of people are very bullish on EV. And it was a guy I was talking to yesterday. I did a show with Erica Williams from the Classic Climb. We had a Just Talk Stocks, or Just Talk Stocks Money show. And a guy was telling us that EV is going to be the thing in like 2030, which is like less than 10 years from now. The question is, what is going to be the catalyst to make everybody adopt EV? Because if you're talking about COVID, if you're talking about 9/11, well, we know what the catalysts were. So the way in which you have to engage with the particular airlines, the catalyst was 9/11. It forced the change, right? A lot of things that we're going to have to do as far as testing and things of that nature and vaccinations. COVID-19 was the catalyst that forced the change. When we're looking at EV, there may be a secular change in the marketplace. The question is, if you believe the adoption is going to be relatively short, what is going to be the catalyst that's going to force that adoption? Because one thing about human beings, if they're in a pattern, they're in a habitual pattern, a lot of times they're very reluctant to come out of that pattern. So then what is going to make them come out of the pattern? And then understand that you're going to get pushback and resistance from that. Well, what they do with the airlines is that it doesn't matter what your pushback is. If you're going to fly, you got to abide by certain rules and regulations. And there was a lot of resistance when they rolled out those TSA inspections. A lot of people didn't like it. But unless you figure out a way to become exempt, and the average person doesn't understand how to do that, then you got to deal with TSA, right? There's a way to get through that line, but the average person doesn't know how to do that, right? So then you just have to figure out how to deal with TSA. So when you go to Hartsfield, you got to get to Hartsfield probably 2 hours before your plane takes off, because the TSA line can be that backed up. Now, it wasn't like that before, but it's like that now. And they didn't ask people whether or not that's what they wanted. Because of 9/11, they forced that kind of change. So you really want to start asking yourself these questions. Is the issue going on in the world from a macroeconomic standpoint, is it cyclical or is it secular? Right? You can also have microeconomic cyclical and secular issues. And then ask yourself, is there a catalyst that can bring about the cyclical issue, or is there a catalyst that can bring about the secular issue, or is it just the fact that the marketplace over time is developing and changing into something else? And we talked about before, at one time, people like baggy clothes, and all of a sudden they started liking skinny jeans. There wasn't anything that really made that happen. It's just taste change over time, right? When you get a whole new generation of people, a lot of times they want to do their own thing. They don't want to do what the people before them did. So you see that in music, you see that in fashion, but a lot of times it just goes right back to what it was before, right? So that's going to be our little topic of the day based on cyclical and secular. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. If you want to know more about the highest paid part-time job in the world, reach out to me. If you want to know more about the VIP course, we're getting ready to launch that June 1st. We pretty much have done all our pre-sales. So everybody now is going to have to come in at the regular price, but I guarantee the value is going to far exceed the cost of it, because I'm going to essentially teach you how to get money out of the market. And that's something that your college did not teach you. So if you got any questions, hit me up. This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, and I'll talk to you later.